Today's the day when you decide whether or not the Mandarin Blueprint method is for you. Now, it is for you if you're one of two groups of people, which is pretty much the only two groups that we are aware of when it comes to Chinese learning. Number one is absolute beginner. So you've just decided to learn Chinese and you're lucky enough to have stumbled upon this video. And the second group is the majority. You're learning Chinese already, but you're frustrated. You're struggling. You're confused about what to do next. You don't really know if you're making progress or not. And we understand this group better than anyone because we were in it for a long time. So that's why we created Mandarin Blueprint, and that's why we spent the last almost 4 years now developing the Mandarin Blueprint method. What this is the fastest way of acquiring Chinese. That's learning how to read, write, speak, and understand Chinese faster than any other way that is out there.
The most challenging part of learning any language is the foundation building period. Just that beginning part where you don't know anything, you don't know any words, and you have to figure out how the language is structured in a very basic sense. And this is especially true of languages like Japanese or Chinese or Arabic that don't have Roman alphabets. And actually, those three languages are considered to be the most difficult languages to learn for a native English speaker, or at least the longest. But I would contend that Chinese especially doesn't need to continue to have that perception. As a matter of fact, I would say that we have successfully made it so that Chinese can be learned way faster than it was before because we've dealt with the fundamental issue that exists in the Chinese education system, which is a lack of good foundation building materials for foreigners. We talked before about how Chinese kids learn Chinese in a totally different way than we can, so it's just never been truly addressed. Well, we've fixed the problem. So now it's possible within a few months to completely finish your foundation building period and realize that, oh, actually Chinese is a much easier language than it seems. So whatever is your reason for learning Chinese, whatever you're going to do, being a Chinese speaker, believe it. You can do it now. And we're going to explain in this video exactly how to go from pressing play in the next video to fluent in Chinese.
We have 36 levels in total for this course that will cover 80% of Chinese. So that's the most common 1,000 words and 500 characters. As you can see from the thumbnails, everything is focused around the characters because, as we've mentioned in our previous 3 videos, characters are the keys. They're the core building blocks of the entire language.
Yeah, so you can see there that the characters are right in the middle. The characters are right in the middle, so you have the most connections to, word sentences and dialogues if you go up, and stories, and of course components and pinyin and tones and all of that if you go down. So they're really the guiding force throughout the entire journey of learning Chinese. So now you can see the entirety of level 1. So what you're looking at here are video lessons. Each of these is a representation of about a 2 to 3 minute video lesson. Some of them get a little bit longer as you go on, and then they get really short towards the end. But each character has a few lessons in it, and you might be thinking, well, wait a second, why would I have 5 lessons to learn one character? Well, it's because things like, say that character on the screen we see there, gan. Well, that's the first time you're using the letter G. And so you need to come up with a representation of that. It's the first time you're using the letters A-N, so you got to come up with a representation of that, but you only have to do it once. And that's what's great about it. So these kind of diminish as you go on. And we start with stuff that anybody could understand. So if we go to the very first individual piece of Chinese that we teach you, it's just a horizontal line. It's really simple. Anybody can handle that.
So we start from the very simple aspects of the language, individual lines, individual letters, and attach real life objects, people, and places to them, just like the memory athletes do. And once we've got all that completely systemized and laid out, then you can use this network of people, places, and objects to learn as many characters as you want very, very quickly.
It really is the ultimate mnemonic toolbox. And just one more point I'll add before we go a little bit deeper in is it's not just easy Chinese to understand like a horizontal line or a vertical line you can see a few lessons down. It's also places from your past that you know very easily. So you'll see that lesson, set the scene, dig into your childhood. Well, that is telling you when we're going to have scenes take place in your childhood home. And that's something you know very well. And the fact that you know that so well already means that we're not just giving you things you can understand in Chinese itself, but also things you can understand from your past. And that's what learning is all about. It's connecting to what you already know.
In the entire course, we have 6 different types of lesson, as you can see from the different thumbnails here in front of you. And each one of these different lessons is responsible for making sure that you remember a different aspect of Chinese easily. We want to make sure that we build a solid foundation of Chinese so that you remember not only the components or the characters or the words, but every single aspect, starting with the pronunciation. So if you look at the very bottom layer, you can see that we have initials or the beginning of Chinese words, for example, SH, and we have the endings of Chinese words. So for example, UO. These are the essential vowels of the language. The first type of video maps out all of the finals of Chinese to visual places in your memory. So for example, you could choose your childhood home, you could choose a school or a workplace, anywhere that you've been before, and this will be the memory palace that you'll be using to remember EI or A or UO or any of the other finals that we have in the language.
And that's that 3D spatial imaging we were talking about. And as you can see in the description of this type of lesson, we give you loads of examples so you don't have to worry about, not being creative. There's plenty of options for you. And the other aspect of pinyin, which we talked about, was the initials, and that's those, SH or N or M or L. And all of those are represented by lessons that we call a casting call lesson. So as you can see here, Luke is explaining, okay, you need to pick a person to represent B. Well, can you know anybody named, for example, maybe Bill Murray, as Luke says here? You can think of so many people that have a name that starts with B, first name or last name. It's really easy, and you only have to do this 55 times. You only have to do the scene 13 times, and that's it. You're done. You did it, right?
And everything is autobiographical. So I chose Bill Murray because I love Bill Murray, or you might choose your friend Brad, or you'll be in your childhood home with your best friends and your favorite celebrities, acting out these movie scenes.
And then we go to the next layer, which is, of course, the components.
And just like with the pronunciation aspects, with the places and the people, we're going to have another real-life set of objects that will represent these components. And you're going to choose them as well. We're going to give you suggestions, but you're going to choose real 3D objects that you know well, that you can interact with in your mind to represent all of the different components in Chinese. Here, Phil is walking you through how to attach this ice prop or this ice component in Chinese to a real life object that is connected with that meaning. So you can choose an icicle, or you could choose an ice skate. Whatever you choose, that's up to you. And that's going to be your personal prop for that component.
So up until now, we've got the core object recognition, which we talked about in the second video, facial recognition, really easy for us to do, the 3D spatial imaging. So we've got actors, sets, and props. And you use actors, sets, and props to make movies. That's what you do, and that's how we learn the actual characters. So we've built up, bottom up, the elements of the characters that you need, visualized all of them, and then we put them together in what we call the make a movie lessons.
This is the most exciting part, because this is where you involve your creativity. This is where you really learn the skill of the memory athletes to start putting these pieces together.
And what's so cool about this is you can see here, this is one of our former students, Rocco, joining Luke here. They're coming up with an idea for how to remember the character for fat. Pong. So you got all those things, and if you look down the description there, you see you've got your P male actor, your ANG set, and even the tone is covered by it being in the bathroom. And you got the props there, the moon and the half an apple. The point is, everything that we have here, we give you ample suggestions, we give you ample opportunity to come up with the things that naturally come to mind. I mean, there is some level of creativity here, but most of it just comes to mind with no problem, because you're like, okay, what would Paul McCartney do if he were in my second apartment in New York City? Like, it's an absurd thing to happen, but that's why it's fun. It's really cool. And Rocco, he just took to it like water.
And every single person that has tried this technique, followed our instructions successfully, has learned hundreds of characters in a matter of days or weeks. And it's so great to see all of our clients bringing up different movie scenes and different actors and different scenarios that we would never even have thought of ourselves to remember characters in their own personal way, using their own memories and locations and people and loved ones. It's just a really fun process.
Exactly. I mean, there were so many times where I was laughing because I was like, wow, these people, they have such cool and interesting ways of bringing their connection to the word. I remember John brought up his a Jimmy Dean breakfast commercial in one of the videos, and I was like, well, if that works, because anything will work for you if you connect it back to your actual childhood memories, your memories in the school, all that stuff.
And this is where a lot of people start to have doubts. They might start to think, okay, well, this looks great. These people seem to be having a great time. Looks like it works for them, but it won't work for me because I can't imagine stuff. And just like Phil said in the second video, yes, you can. You can imagine a movie scene that you like, or you can imagine a memory from your early childhood very, very easily. Yeah. And this is all this is. This is just creating false memories using certain techniques that are thousands of years old that memory athletes still use to this day to learn all sorts of crazy numbers and objects and digits of pi.
Yeah. And actually what just came up on the screen here is a good example of how we always keep things connected to each other. So you just learned this character and it's going to be a component in later characters. The whole character can actually be a component. So we'll say, okay, so pick a prop for this. And that's something you just learned. So it's connected, of course, to what you did before. And that's how the entire course functions. And that's why most people, they go through it really quickly.
It's one linear process. So you just keep pressing play, you follow the instructions, and the incredibly short videos and well-designed content will just guide you through step by step. There's a lot of steps, but the steps are easy and simple.
Right. Chinese provides the steps. There's no avoiding the fact that it's a big and very rich and therefore fulfilling language to learn. But at least if you know each individual step is easy, then it's just a matter of showing up. Just a matter of showing up.
Exactly. And trust me when we say we've got every single base covered. We've been working on this for over 4 years now.
Yeah.
So we know exactly what you need to learn, and we've taken care of every aspect of it. So that it's all very, very clearly laid out for you.
Now let's talk about what happens when we get to the next layer. So you'll see now we get into vocabulary. And just by the way, this is where most teachers start, which is a really bad area to start, because look at how much you could potentially not know even in one vocabulary word. Now, if you look in the middle there, the very center word is just one character. And there actually are a lot of characters that are also words. Not all characters are words, but many are. And we will tell you about that. So whenever that happens, we're going to have a lesson which we just call an It's a Word lesson. So right after you learn any given character, we're going to say, hey, you can actually use this character independently in a sentence if you want to. And for the characters that you can't do that, you need to know the difference. And so that's what these It's a Word lessons are about. And in the beginning, we tell you, hey, don't worry too much about these. Focus on the characters first, because that's the first phase of the course. But when we move further along and we get to phase 2, which is about level 6 or 7, I believe, level 7, we start talking about these compound words, these 2 or 3 or 4 character words, mostly 2. And those we call new vocabulary unlocked lessons. You've learned both characters in the word, and you learned them properly.
So here's an example of a new vocabulary unlocked lesson where if you follow the linear process of this course, you would have unlocked 3 brand new, very useful, very common vocabulary words, compound words. So here I am just walking you through a brief definition of the words and how the characters relate to one another. We spend some time, first of all, building this knowledge by connecting to the words, just like Phil said in the second video. So we think of ways to connect to words individually based on our own lived experience, and we back it up with native audio and images, and we put it all into these incredible flashcards, which we've designed for you.
Yeah, and it's great because that gives you that layer of getting to know Chinese words, sort of building a relationship with it. I think Steve Kaufman refers to this as kind of having a love affair with the language a little bit. You're kind of just getting to know it. And when you're in that honeymoon period, it's perfectly worth doing. We spent too long in this layer. Like we just tried to learn thousands of words on Memrise and through Anki and whatever. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't spend no time at this layer. It just doesn't need to be that long, because the best way to really learn a word is by moving up to those next 2 layers, sentences and dialogues, and really like full stories.
As quick as possible, but you don't want to rush yourself either.
Right, because if you rush yourself, you're going to have way too many things that you don't understand. So that's phase 3 when we move up to the sentence and story layer. But before you get to phase 3, because there's a big transition between phase 2 and phase 3, so we'll give you a little sense of how that works. So once you finish character number 104, we stop the every single lesson has a video way of going about it, because you're ready to run at this point. You've learned the techniques, you've built up your mnemonic toolbox. You have your sets, your actors, your props. You understand how it all works. So you don't need us to hold your hand. You can go start sprinting. And at this point, it's another key moment, because if we look at one of these new vocabulary unlocked lessons, you'll start to see, if we scroll down, there's no more pinyin at this point, because you know 104 characters. Now, that's enough to start making sentences that don't need pinyin, but we also get some top-down. So you see that top-down words idea? Well, look, 中国 means China, and that's a word you're going to see all the time. You don't necessarily need to know both characters to memorize that, because it's so common. Same thing with ta, the pronoun for him. So the idea here is that we'll show you some top-down words, stuff that's, we don't want to insult your intelligence with and say you can't possibly understand. But mostly, it's stuff you can completely get.
It's got stuff you'll be seeing all the time. It's kind of like how in the United States culture, there's a lot of Spanish words that everyone just knows. It's just like everyone knows what gracias means.
Yeah. Uno, dos, tres. So, like, I've never studied Spanish, but there's some words you just pick up. And
Exactly.
Similarly, there's certain words like this, that, him, her. They're really easy, so we will occasionally show you that.
And you don't need to know every single thing about a sentence to get the message of that sentence, to be able to utilize it to acquire the vocabulary and grammar within it. Okay? You just need to get the rough idea for the most part.
So then the question becomes, how long does it take to get to this point where you're really starting to learn some grammar, acquire the language, really acquire the language? Well, it does somewhat depend on you and how much time you spend on it per day, but we've had people do it in literally 2 days. Get through the first 104 characters, memorize them properly, pass an exam that shows that they memorized it properly, sent us a spaced repetition flashcard deck that shows they have mastery of the system. 2 days. It's possible. So you can be acquiring Chinese just like you could start acquiring Spanish on day 1, except maybe it's day 3. The idea is that we've changed the game here.
Currently, people study in university or have private classes. Like Phil said, they start you off from way deep into the layered structure that we showed you. They start you off by trying to teach you words without teaching you characters or spending much time on pronunciation. They just jump straight in. So all this, you have like the sieve effect. Stuff just ends up falling out, and you end up just going through that cycle that I mentioned in the third video, where it's just study, cram, examinations, forget. Study, examination, forget. Study, examination, forget. You don't get that with this because you build such a strong foundation from the ground up.
And of course, what you get with this is the acquisition cycle, which you brought up in the third video, which is the opposite. It's the positive, the virtuous circle, right? Where you get the words and characters you understand. But then the question becomes, it's not like there's only one grammatical structure in Chinese. There's several. I mean, Chinese grammar is pretty easy, but how are you supposed to figure out all of them? Well, most people go to a textbook, and we understand because all these linguists spent all this time making these textbooks, but it's full of linguistic language, and it's full of just ways of thinking about it that are far too analytical. And so what we've done is set it up so that everything you need to know about grammar, that is every grammar point that's relevant to Chinese, which is a limited number, is covered. But the way that it's covered is not through grammar explanations, but rather comprehensible input, which is exactly what the linguists say you should do. So what we're looking at on the screen is a list of the sentences that you will start to see at level 13. Now, level 13, you've learned 104 characters and approximately 60 compound words or so, which means that that's enough for you to start making simple sentences. And you can assume if the top-down words column is blank, that's because every single character or word in the sentence has already been acquired through the Hanzi movie method and our vocabulary connections that we do in phase 2. Then when we look at the tags over here, you can see that each individual sentence was tagged with its grammar points, but given names that aren't so linguistically challenging, and that can more easily be shown by looking over here at the tag section. So the way we decided to do it was focusing on not using such professional linguistic language, which just serves to confuse people. For example, a linguistic word like predicate is a more precise word than, or 2 words, does what. But that's essentially what a predicate is trying to get across. So we're saying, okay, does what plus a describer or an adjective. And I'm not going to say adjective, I'm going to say a describer because that's what an adjective is doing. So all of these different tags are based on this idea. Now, we'll go into more detail about how this works, but needless to say, we have put a great deal of thought into exactly how to present this so that you as the observer do not have to feel lost about grammar points. Instead, when we introduce grammar points, it will be like a light bulb moment.
You're actually going to learn not by studying the language, you're going to learn by living the language. You're going to learn by actually reading and listening to sentences that you can understand based on words and characters that you've recently learned, that you know very well because you've built memory palaces and use all sorts of very effective memory techniques to learn them. And you're going to just jump straight into absorbing the language, and then later on we'll point out to you, oh, by the way, this grammar point works this way. And you'll be discovering what you already know in a very satisfying way, rather than just sort of, well, like when we were in school and like so many people in university learning Chinese, it's like, this is how this grammar works. Oh,
yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, I'll take your word for it.
The emotional state of it is like, okay, sure. As opposed to if you've seen a sentence that has that grammar point at least 10 times.
You get these light bulb moments, don't you?
Yeah, it's much more like,
oh, that's what I've been reading. Oh, I see.
And that feels good, and then you get those. So we try to set it up that way. So it's like, okay, you've already seen this grammar structure like 10 to 15, maybe 20 times, and now we'll be like, hey, this is how it works. And then you'll be like, oh, cool, right? So it's fun in that way. So let's look again at this whole thing. If you imagine that you're going to learn a character, say, 说 in 说明, right? That character has representations at every single layer, right? And you're moving from the very beginning to who's my SH representation all the way up to seeing it in a story all the time. And every single layer reinforces the other layers. And this is that holistic approach. You're moving in between the layers, and we would say the characters are probably your roots. They're the roots of the tree. They kind of keep things together. But when it comes down to it, everything is getting used at every layer. And that's what you need to have a fully holistic approach, and that's how we designed it.
On top of all these different types of lessons, we also have this bonus and reference material. So at any time, despite all the very clear videos, if you still forget certain details about how the method works or how to choose props or sets or how to put it all together, you can just click down here and open up these. These are shared Google Docs that are sort of living documents. So you can actually interact, send us comments, anything you want to add to it. But this is always growing and developing along with our community.
Yeah, the reason I thought to do it this way was because it was like, well, we could just put these descriptions somewhere in the course, but then, it doesn't give you the option to just highlight something and hit comments. And then if you're not clear on something, we can update it. Maybe you're well-researched in something we put here and you have an extra comment you want to add. We'll gladly take a look at it. And so if you're more of a written person, you like to see things in written explanation, we've got you covered. But more important than the Google Docs is the flashcards. And so the flashcards are in the same exact linear order that you see in the videos. So every single thing, whether it was a prop or an actor or a set representing the various aspects of a character or a word or a sentence, it's all there. And so what that means is that you never have to worry about that recall question. And what it comes down to is that if you never review, you will still eventually forget. It doesn't matter how good your techniques are. Just like the memory champions, they'll remember a deck of cards for that day. But if they never reviewed it, they will forget what the order was of the cards. Well, this stuff's important, so you're going to have a flashcard for everything. And the main point to take away from it is that you're never going to forget anything that you learn in the course as long as you do the flashcards as well.
So all in all, there are just under 600 characters that you'll learn with this course as it stands at the moment. Just under 1,000 words, which are all based on spoken frequency. So they are the most common words of the language, which cover about 80 to 90% of the entire thing. We also have thousands of flashcards, 7,000 flashcards included. But all this aside, the point is that you just have to click play and then next lesson, play, next lesson from the comfort of your own home in front of your laptop or computer or mobile phone. And you will walk out of it literate and eventually fluent in Chinese.
What is the real benefit is that it gets you to the acquisition cycle faster than was ever possible before. Because we all know that if you really want to get fluent in a language, you have to see lots of content like TV shows, novels, whatever. It's just the same thing as your native language. You really started to get good at English when you were reading a lot and when you started to write and all of that stuff. So getting to that point in Chinese was super complicated before and had a bunch of mistaken paths that the teachers were putting forward. And so now the path is clear, it's direct, and you get to that point where you're in that acquisition cycle, and it's just all fun from there. You get to read your favorite novel as a kid in Chinese. It's fun.
So that's, of course, the main benefit and the thing that you're interested in. You come out of this course learning Chinese easily, quickly, and by having a lot of fun in the process. But there's also a few hidden benefits as well. So one of the key hidden benefits is that you are going to learn how to build and use memory palaces to learn things. Now, it doesn't have to be Chinese or a language. It could be anything. Me and Phil have done speeches in Chinese that we memorized in 1 or 2 nights.
设计研发汉语蓝图 APP， 相信等我们的 APP 普及了之后，将会引起汉语教学的改革。
And another one is the structure that you have to follow is very, very similar to learning any other language. Whether it's a Latin-based language like French or Spanish or Russian. You have to start with pronunciation and build up a foundation of words, start reading and listening as fast as you possibly can, and then focus on producing the language as you get better, as you understand more of it. So naturally, a question we get all the time, and it's a completely reasonable question, is how long will this take me? And I had a drum teacher say to me a long time ago, it's not the years, it's the days, or it's the hours, really. And so the way we calculated it was we said, okay, well, we know how many Anki cards you have. We know how many videos they are. We know how long it takes to watch these. We know about how long it takes to do each individual mnemonic scene. And we know how long it takes to review a flashcard. So while it's not 100% precise, we've got pretty good, accurate predictions you can make based on how many hours a day. So if you only spend a half hour a day on it, you'll still go way faster than most people do. But it'll take a certain amount of time. And then we have this calculator on our website, so you can go to mandarinblueprint.com and check it out. But hour a day, hour and a half a day, it's all about how much time you put into it each day. But it's actually pretty objective. And the fact that you can be objective about how long does my foundation building period in Chinese last, you can conceptualize it. You can imagine, okay, 3 months from now, 1 month from now, I think, we'll see what happens. But I think somebody's going to be saying 2 weeks from now, we'll see how it goes. But yeah. A lot of people as well might be looking at this thinking, well, I can't put in an hour every day. I've got kids, I've got a job, I've got other responsibilities, and I can't just suddenly develop this habit of studying for an hour. I'm not that kind of person. Well, trust me when I say, once you see the results from this course, and once you see that every single step you take, every 2-minute video is delivering a huge chunk of knowledge and the language to you, you will get addicted. You will start wanting to study for an hour at least a day, or study, I say, taking in the knowledge and applying it and doing all this entertaining stuff, like choosing actors and making these crazy movie scenes in your head and learning the language at the same time. You're going to want to do it. That's one of the key benefits of this course as well.
Yeah, not to mention fun. It's small chunks too, right? So it's like at any point, I'm in the elevator for a moment. Let me do 3 flashcards, right? So you can always find little cracks in your day. That one of the guys we showed on the screen earlier was kind enough to join us for a few video shoots. Named John. He has 2 boys, and he would be in a live lesson with us, and his boys would be coming up in the background. And he'd just be like, "Hey guys, I'm having a lesson. I love you very much." But he was just such a great guy, and he was super busy. He teaches in an international school, but he found a way to fit it into his day and the little cracks in his day. So it's totally possible.
And that's one of the things that we are pretty much experts on as well, is developing habits for study, because we did it for so many years. And we are, as well as obviously the content that you get in the course, we also give you a lot of extra bonus content all about motivation and habit building.
Exactly.
And it's actually much easier than it seems.
When you join the course, you automatically get subscribed to a email sequence that is meant to be motivational in nature and, gets you motivated when you're not feeling so good. Maybe you left it for a week because, you've been busy with stuff. We'll try to, hey, come on, keep going because you want this. This is something you actually want. And at the end of each level, we do a level review where we kind of give you a chance to step back, see where you are in the larger process. Because, when you're in the middle of a video that's about a specific character component, you're in the details, right? You're not seeing the wood for the trees. So occasionally we need to pull back and be like, okay, where are you in the total blueprint? And so we've really tried to hit the habit building side of it from a number of angles as well.
And I also want to mention that although this course is huge, it's 1,900 lessons just in this current version, we are always working daily to build it out. We're dedicated to building all the characters necessary for advanced fluency, covering almost 100% of the language eventually. But we focused on this aspect first, the 80 to 90% foundation building, because that's what is enough to get you guys into the foundational acquisition cycle so you can start learning on your own effectively.
Yeah.
But we're going to be constantly adding new mini courses to this, building out the characters all the way to 3,000 or more characters, 5,000, 10,000 words over the next coming months and years.
So we talked about the 3 phases at this point. We got the characters and components in phase 1, leading logically into the vocabulary, which then we put together and start to get our grammar module, our language module going in phase 3. Now, we've talked about all of these methods, and we're incredibly confident they'll work. We know they'll work. But nonetheless, you have choices in front of you. You could choose to enroll in a Chinese course in university. You can maybe choose tutors or maybe other online services. And first, I'll just say that these things are not necessarily mutually exclusive. However, as a person who went to university, just crunch the numbers for a second. Even a Chinese university, which is about the cheapest you're going to be able to find, that's about $1,500 a semester. 4 years, so that's $3,000 a year, about $12,000 to get a degree in Chinese. And we've already talked about how they use methods that don't exactly fit with linguistic research, right? That's a pretty expensive way to go about it, and that's Chinese universities. I picked the cheapest example. I mean, I think everybody knows how expensive universities are getting, especially in the States.
Or you could use tutors. Now, there's lots of different ways to find tutors, either where you live, or you can go move to China and go find them that way. But let's be fair, let's be as fair as we possibly can and say you're going to find them online, which is the cheapest and most effective source of Chinese tutors. So they're roughly range between $10 and $15 for a half-decent tutor. Now, you could invest many hours a week with someone you found online, but you have, of course, no way of knowing how good they're going to be. Maybe you drop them for another teacher and then another teacher, and finally you find a good one. They're going to either use a textbook or they're going to essentially be a conversation partner who makes up as they go along. That's pretty much your 2 options when it comes to a tutor. And we've already talked about textbook learning, how ineffective it is, how boring it can be, and how the bottom-up, top-down structure, the mix is all wrong. And it can be very frustrating, we know, personally. So depending on how many hours you invest, this could end up costing you a similar amount, if not more, than universities. Now, of course, you could also try and work it out yourself by doing it online, similar to how me and Phil did, but by using the knowledge that we've taught you in the last few videos. And you could do a lot better that way.
Yeah, so you go online and you choose to do one service that's good for, say, learning characters. There's a few services out there that, I would argue that the Mandarin Blueprint method is a little bit better, but nonetheless, they're decent for learning characters. That's kind of all they do, right? And then you've got other ones that are decent for learning vocabulary. So we're, saying maybe $8, $10 a month for each of those for about, $20 a month there. But you can't stop there. You need to get some services that are good as graded readers so that you can read content that's at your level. And those are, actually, I'm finding those to be getting more expensive recently. So we'll say that's about $15 a month. So we're at $35 a month. You'll likely also want to get involved in one of the podcast apps like Chinese Pod or Pop-Up Chinese or these types of subscription services that bring the price up to over $50 a month just to have enough materials that you're covering all your bases. But most importantly, it's not a curriculum, right? So it's just, you have to figure it out for yourself. You kind of have to move between them and hope that there's enough overlap. And there will be some, but there will be a lot of stuff you don't understand. So unfortunately, that route is, it puts a lot of onus on you to figure things out.
Now, with the course that we've been talking about today, the Mandarin Blueprint method, we pretty much got all bases covered. So we cover characters, we cover vocabulary acquisition, one of the most efficient possible ways based on mnemonic techniques of memory athletes. And we have grammar acquisition by reading content you understand. And this, of course, is a way of feeding your language module to actually acquire the language so that you'll be able to use it and start speaking and build that foundation all with one integrated system for the same price as one of the services that Phil just mentioned. But before we get into the actual price, I first want to point out that we have a 30-day guarantee on every single purchase, no matter what. So you could use our products, you could download all of the flashcards, use the platform for up to 30 days, and for any reason or no reason at all, you could just send us an email and we will rush your money back to you immediately. So let's get into the price. What exactly does this platform cost? Well, it depends on how much you want to invest up front. So we have, for example, a month-by-month basis. That's the most expensive option at $30 a month. And with that, you get a 10-day free trial. And as an extra bonus, 20% off of our pronunciation mastery video course. But the much better deal is if you pay for 6 months in advance, which would half the monthly price down to $15 a month. Now that also comes with a 10-day free trial, but an extra added bonus of 50% off the pronunciation mastery course. Now there is a final option. For $499, you can get access to all video courses that we make for life, whether on this current video platform which we have or our app in the future. Now we're not only going to be creating more video courses in the future, but we're also going to be massively expanding the current ones we have to cover thousands more characters and words. So there's much more content on the way for you all to enjoy. So that's also a very viable option as well.
Now, obviously, that's a ridiculously good price for what you're getting. We've had a number of conversations about it where we were like, should we really go this low? But here's the reason why we still decide to go with this price. First, it's the internet. We don't have to pay teachers. We don't have to buy a whole set of textbooks for everybody. So there's that. I mean, we even made the material ourselves. So we have that option. There's lower overhead. So that's just a practical reason. But the other reason is that this really works. Take a look at this clip from the guy who won the Mandarin Blueprint Challenge. He learned 105 characters in 2 days.
By watching the movie, the way you make the teaching, it's not boring. 1 minute and you got a prop. 1 minute, well, you just invest your time 1 or 2 minutes, you get something. But if you invest 3 minutes, you get to watch one movie that can be have two transcript, 3 transcript. It's something pretty cool. That's why it just make me, the more I start to watch the movie, the more motivate me to watch more and more to finish one level. Like, okay, I need to finish this episode movie, something like that.
And we're talking about pronunciation, reading, and even writing the characters. And he did that with only a very basic understanding of Pinyin or Chinese pronunciation.
So that's why we want to get as many people seeing this as possible, because we know A, it actually works, and B, if you get through this foundation building period with Chinese, the later stages are easy and fun. It's a cool language. It's a really logical language. It's fun to go through it and read your favorite things from childhood, or read a comic book, or watch a movie in Chinese. It's so cool. Makes you think differently. It's an awesome language. And so we want to get people there. We need to charge a little bit of something because, we got to keep the lights on, but that's not, the point is that it actually works. We can change people's perception that Chinese is the hardest language in the world. And so that's what we're setting out to do. So how do you actually sign up? Well, you'll notice on the very page where this video is embedded, you can now see the price. So if you go down here to get started, you just click this button. That new tab will take you to the checkout page. You simply put in your email address, add your card information, subscribe to the list so that you get our emails, and then you hit complete purchase. It will process for you, at which point you'll be prompted to make your username and account, make your own password, and you'll get an email reminding you of the password. Tick create account, and there you are. You can start right on the pronunciation mastery of the Mandarin Blueprint method right away, and if you'd like, you can go over to settings and set up a profile picture. Setting up the profile picture will allow for us to have a better community feel because we'll be able to see your smiling face or avatar, of course. And then you can just go to view course and then simply click start course and you're ready to go. Thank you so much again for watching, everybody. We're so excited and honored to have this opportunity to really help people learn Chinese faster than ever before, and we'll see you soon on the course.